Councilmember Castle.
Present.
Councilmember Hamid Bean. Deputy Mayor Katz.
Here.
Councilmember Pruitt.
Here.
Councilmember Schwartz.
Here.
Councilmember Stone.
Here.
Mayor Parker.
Here.
Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by Resolution Number 274-2014, setting the 2015 meeting dates, sending a copy to the newspapers officially designated for 2015 by way of Resolution Number 275-2014, filing a copy in the Township Clerk's Office and posting it on the Municipal Building Bulletin Board, and the Mayor hereby directs that this statement be included in the minutes.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's meeting. For the record, we have present with us William Broughton, our Township Manager. Is Issa here or coming? Okay, Issa Abassi will be joining us later, our Executive Assistant to the Township Manager, Jamie Evelina, Township Clerk. There's a lot of chatter. Can we please? Thank you. Colleen, and that's for the tape, not just because I want people to be quiet so that we can get the recording of the tape. Colleen Hannigan, Senior Clerk, and William Rupp from the law firm of Winnie Banta. The next televised council meeting will take place on Tuesday, February 10th, with legal opening to begin at 7 p.m. and public input to begin at 8 p.m. The first of 4 budget meetings will be held at 7 p.m. on Thursday, January 29th, 2015, in council chambers. Council met in closed session to discuss the following items, and was that read into the resolution? Okay. Thank you. For the record, council, as stated when we created our council meeting schedule, I will be late tomorrow evening, but we'll be here as close to 7 o'clock as possible. I have a work commitment that I'm unable to get out of. With that said, the presentation on the presentation on 1500 Teaneck Road will be rescheduled until February 24th. February 24th. We'll now move to the work sessions on our agenda. Miscellaneous, we don't have anything. Old business, stigma-free zone. We discussed the stigma-free zone. I brought it up before the previous council. I don't think it's been discussed during this council, but basically it's a program that is run by the County of Bergen where Teaneck would be designated as a stigma-free zone for anyone who has a mental illness. It requires certain steps on behalf of the council. At the last meeting, me and Deputy Mayor Katz were assigned to a subcommittee. I would like to see this issue referred to our Social Service Advisory Board for them to come up with a plan on how it can be implemented, unless there's another advisory board that the manager feels more appropriate. Stigma-free, referring it to the Social Service Advisory Board.
I think that's appropriate.
Okay. So is council in agreement with that?
Yep. Yes.
Okay. So I have a packet of information in my car, William, that I will give to you for their next meeting. New business, there is none. Communications, there is none. Committee reports, does any council members have any committee reports?
The only thing I can report from the Board of Education is at their last meeting, actually they're having a meeting this evening, but last week's meeting, they commended the council for Leadership Teaneck. They were very thankful for receiving an invitation to take part in the final session. They said that they are looking to implement something similar across the Board of Ed, and they are interested in having conversations with members of council or the manager about areas where we can better share service. They listed things that went into effect last year where we were sharing services with the school board, but they'd like to expand upon that list, and one of the examples that they gave was potential conversations around bonding for new buildings and properties, which is apparently something that is not done currently. But they ended the note with just saying that they like the progress that they see happening with our meetings, and they also want to incorporate some type of Leadership Teaneck aspect to the Board of Ed. So,
Deputy Mayor, do you have any committee reports? We did the last meeting.
No.
Councilman Sone? Councilman Schwartz? Councilman Pruitt? I have a brief report which I will expand upon at our next meeting, but since our last meeting, I had an opportunity to attend the U.S. Conference of Mayors in Washington, D.C. I went to a White House briefing on Tuesday where we got a preview of the State of the Union address. It was a phenomenal conference, paid for by myself. Just, Jamie, please make sure that that's on the record, not taxpayer paid. It was a phenomenal conference where I was able to meet and network with mayors from all over the country. We were invited all back to the White House on Friday, where the President reiterated many of the points that he made during the State of the Union and opened up his office to us. I received a lot of contact information. One of the things that I would like to see us do, and this is just one thing off the top of my head, in light of the recent blizzard / snowstorm, is they recommended ways in which municipalities or cities around the country could become digital cities, and engaging residents to become more engaged with the government through technology. And I discussed this with the manager. I have been contacted by a few interns from Rutgers University, and one of the complaints that I've heard from many of the council members, this council and the previous council, is that we're not reaching enough people with our alerts. And I thought that a great project would be to have students work on going out into the community and signing people up to register for our township alerts. So I will expand upon that at a later date, but one of the other workshops that I attended also was how to build a better working relationship with universities within the community. And I received a lot of good information how we can receive in-kind benefits from Fairleigh Dickinson specifically. So I look forward to exploring those options in an effort to help out Teaneck in various ways.
Mayor, can I?
Sure.
I definitely commend you for going down to the Conference of Mayors. I think the only thing that you stated that I don't agree with is that if you were acting on behalf of the township as an agent of the town, that is done on your own dime. Because if you went down there, and I'll throw it out there, and you can, if somebody wants to respond to it during good and welfare and say that it's a wrong position, but if you went down on behalf of the town as the mayor to a mayor's conference, for you to flip the bill for doing that on behalf of the residents of the town is not something that I am necessarily okay with. In private industry, if you're working for your organization and you're advocating for your organization, the organization pays for it. And I think that if you went down there, not as Lizette Parker, but as Mayor Lizette Parker, then the municipality has a responsibility to cover the cost of that expense.
And I thank you for that. But given our current economic environment as we enter into a budget season, I'm fine with taking care of it on my own at this time. I think that perhaps we need to explore other funding options so that mayors in the future could go, because there was a benefit to networking and meeting with different mayors from different cities. So, but that, for right now, I'm fine with it. But I do thank you for that. Okay, council listed items. Councilman Song.
I did not attend a meeting that was held on June 24th. And at the June 24th meeting, there was a presentation from the Holocaust Memorial Committee. And there's been no action that we have yet taken. I feel very, very strongly that something should be done. And I think we've had some informal discussions and that we should take action on this. As much as, to me, it seemed necessary and vital to remind the public and to remind our community to remember the Holocaust, I think the events of the past few weeks, the past few months, remind us of that. I had an opportunity to pay a Shiva call this afternoon to visit my in-law's father. He lost a brother, but he also lost a brother 80 years ago. April 21st, 1933. He was one of the first four Jews killed at Dachau concentration camp, remarkably shortly after the Nazis took power. And in celebrating the 70th anniversary of the liberation of the Auschwitz concentration camp, in observing, I don't say and I apologize for celebrating, and observing the 70th International Holocaust Memorial Day, I think that we have an opportunity as a township to mark that. There have been a number of locations proposed. We've gone around on that, and I would like to suggest that we look at the municipal green as an opportunity, not just for a Holocaust memorial, but for other prospective memorials, that we identify prospective sites on the municipal green that might accommodate a number of memorials, and that we give the Holocaust Memorial Committee a number of prospective options and parameters, length and width, and prospective height and bulk, and what the process would be. But I think that we should be able to get this process started. I know that the Holocaust Memorial Committee is on the agenda for the February 24th meeting, but I hope that before then that we could start to give the committee a series of parameters for moving ahead with a monument, for what those parameters are, so that they can get started designing, fundraising, and making a presentation in an informed basis and move ahead on this. I think this is something that where citing it on the municipal green really allows us to integrate a much more educational function. And in speaking with a number of individuals who have been involved in Holocaust education, that is really a critical element that I think is uniquely available by having it here, and being able to tie a Holocaust memorial into an educational component in the Teaneck Public Library, which already has a significant collection. Teaneck High School has a significant collection, and we can benefit tremendously. There are logistic issues that need to be addressed, most notably parking, and I think that this is something that there seems to be consensus on the council, and I think that this is something that we as a community should move forward. Teaneck is a remarkably diverse community, and whatever tragedy has befallen individuals, their families, their communities, their ancestors, has befallen residents of Teaneck. And I think in marking man's inhumanity to inhumanity, that to start with a memorial to the Holocaust here on the municipal green is an appropriate way to educate the community, educate the public, and if anybody thought that those lessons have been unlearned or have been forgotten, it is happening now, and I think we need to take action now.
Councilman Schwartz?
I just want to mention that I support Mr. Sohn's recommendation.
My only comment is I support everything he said, except I still firmly believe that the Brett Park location is a more fitting place. I think that there's plenty of tragedies, regrettably, that's taken place in this world. There's at least several that have taken place that have affected so many township residents, and the Holocaust being one of them. And Brett Park is, especially Upper Brett Park, is a parking lot. Let's say call it what it is. It's a parking lot. And I think that the potential to create something different and something special, meaningful, memorable, and something that we can hopefully will serve truly serve the purpose, I think Brett Park would be the better location. I love our municipal green. It's a really, it's done a great job, and the manager did a great job on the renovation of that. And I don't think that's what the intent of that renovation is, nor the intent of the grounds for something like that.
I agree with what Councilman Sohn said. I disagree with Councilman Schwartz just on the location, and here's why. I think that when we talk about what we are going to assign as being hallowed ground, with the cultural climate that we're in right now, with things that are happening across the world, I think that the safest place, the place where more residents can come and safely observe is a place that's in the shadow of our police department. I think that we have a number of ceremonies that we currently have on the municipal green, and being from a culture that has a shared atrocity, in a different time as I speak about slavery, but it is a shared atrocity. There is a tremendous amount of overlap. I look at where I would want a monument that was celebrating the lives that were lost, right, and to pay honor to them. And I would want that monument, if it were about slavery, on the municipal green. And I would want that monument right next to a Holocaust monument, so that the two largest sects of our community, from a cultural perspective, could have equal observance and shared observance in these atrocities where we have great overlap. So I think it should be on the municipal green. I support the Holocaust Memorial, but I also think that we as a council need to do our due diligence of carving out a height requirement and a footprint, so that we don't have to entertain conversations later on that we are giving one religion or one atrocity or one tragedy more preference than another.
I'm in favor of also putting it at the municipal green. Obviously, I'd like to, I support this concept, and the details are very important. But what was concerning to me is, the presentation where they explain how buses and tours, et cetera, are going to come to that area. And I don't believe that it's going to be an easy task to get that achieved in that area. I mean, we saw what happened when temporary soccer was put there while they're renovating Voti Park, and all the residents in that area came and screamed and yelled. I can only imagine what would happen when we have buses of tours, et cetera, come in that area. So I do support the municipal complex as a very, I guess, central location that probably has the most, well, at times tight as far as parking, but I guess the best access and less. I have to choose my words carefully, so I'm thinking about it, but less impactful to a residential neighborhood.
So what action do we need to take to have, is that done through subcommittee? Or should we do it through subcommittee to decide what the footprint should be? Or what are our next steps?
I think that what we need to do is to get the acceptance of the people who want to put it in Brett Park to look at this site, which is a better site in terms of a contemplative site. There are several memorials already here. We're reaching out to the community in general that if they have a recommendation for commemorating their particular tragedies, this is a good place to have it. It's in the center of town. And we need to be concerned about taking a recreational space in a park and making it into a memorial space, because the precedent is if you use one park for one community's commemoration, it makes it very difficult to tell a different community in a different park, no, you can't put yours over there. We're saying, let's have all of them here.
I understand that, but I'm saying, do we want to wait until they come in on February 24th? Or do we want to start the process of, designating an area like the county has for different groups?
I think the subcommittee idea is a good idea, and I think hopefully if we can, I don't know that there's that much work that needs to be done, and that ideally if we can go back to the committee and offer some of those parameters so that when they come in on the 24th, they can already have start brainstorming, developing ideas, developing concepts, and getting that process going. I think that it is very important that we move forward. And that we move along a process that started several months ago. And again, at its most recent iteration, this is something where I think there is broad consensus that we should do something. Let's start moving ahead.
I think a subcommittee would be advisable, working with the manager to identify a specific location and, work with the group to see what type of size requirements they're looking for and see if, what the feasibility is, and then report back to the council, even prior to them coming in, so that we can give them better direction. So they don't just come here and put on whatever presentation they're going to put on with lack of support.
Mayor, I would like to volunteer for that subcommittee if
And
we as a
I'm willing
council.
to be on as well.
I think that we need to be clear that it is the council's recommendation that it not be in Brett Park, but it should
Yeah, I
be.
think that's clear. So we have Councilman Castle, Deputy Mayor Katz, and anyone else wishing?
You can only have 3, huh?
Yeah, I only mentioned 2. Did you want to be? What? Okay. Next item, Councilman Song.
Next item, I would like to strongly suggest that we start developing a policy and procedure on council where it is the entire council, it is the Township of Teaneck that is putting on and presenting, whether it's safety events, whether it is internet safety events, whether it is
You
once.
missed something. Number 2.
Oh, sorry about that. I was looking ahead. In looking at the results of that were sent to us over the past week from appraisal systems, they're a view of the chart. And this is something that Professor Levin and I had looked at. We had taken the data that was available, and there were some significant discrepancies. The results that we received reduced those discrepancies, but one would expect to see a very, very simple straight diagonal line, that a home that sold for $200,000 should be assessed at $200,000, a home that sold for $400,000 should be assessed at $400,000, $600,000 is $600,000, $800,000 is $800,000. And in looking at the results, one sees that lower-priced homes tend to be assessed closer to their sale price, and as the sale prices increase, the assessments tend to decrease, and that there is a strong linear relationship where higher-priced homes are assessed below that line. The second page that we were sent provides a analysis of the 195 sales that took place in 2014 and groups them by neighborhood. There are some outliers. There's one particular neighborhood that had only one sale, but for the most, where that was at 109% of, it was assessed at 109% of the sale price. But among all the other neighborhoods, there is an average of 94%. Now, that number already starts raising the question, why are we not assessed at 100%? The broader question is that we're not all at 94%. We range from some neighborhoods, which tend to be on in the Northeast, that are assessed at 100%. Or over 100%, and other neighborhoods which tend to be on the opposite side of the tracks, which are as low as 88% on average. And this raises, to me, significant questions about the fairness of that revaluation. And we, if I understand correctly, sent that data off to the county on Friday, if I understand correctly. But I am still deeply concerned that we are creating a situation where these values will present many residents with significant discrepancies between neighborhoods, where people in one side of town are, in essence, paying taxes on 100% of property, and people in some other parts of town are as low as 88%. And I hope that rather than dealing with this by having a mass of tax appeals, that we deal with this by identifying, eliminating, and addressing any systematic errors in the 2014-2015 revaluation.
Councilman Castle?
I concur with the assessment that Councilman Sohn and Professor Levin have come to and have presented. I think it's one of those situations where we have to look at the fact that we just spent more than $700,000 taxpayer dollars to get this right. And if not for the residents who may step forward and continue to file tax assessment appeals because the process in and of itself is not clear, they don't feel that it was fair. We've been hit with a wave of tax assessment appeals over the past several years, and because this particular revaluation raises more questions than provides answers, I think that we have a moral obligation to ensure that the company that we just paid $700,000 or more than $700,000 to gets it right. But the other thing I'll say is this, and I'll use this example simply because it's one I'm most comfortable with. If I go and I buy an iPhone, right, the cost of the iPhone is the exact same amount. Apple, as an organization, is getting the same dollar amount. If it's a $500 iPhone, it's a $500 iPhone. If I go to AT&T might offer me that device at $199. But Apple is still collecting the total amount of what that iPhone is, and it's equal across the board. There may be an intermediary that's saying, you know, we're going to subsidize the cost, but at the end of the day, they are paying 100% of the value. Right now, we have assessments in town, to Councilman Sohn's point, where they're paying more than 100% of the value, and others are getting a 10% discount. And at no point along the spectrum is a check being written to the township for a home that's only paying 95% or 90% of its value. We're not getting that 5 or that 10%. And we're asking other residents who are paying more than 100% to make it up. So, you know, just to be fair and balanced, I think that if we're going to assess homes, they should all be assessed as close to 100% as possible, and everyone should pay their fair share, as opposed to saying, if you live in the, this quadrant of town, you're getting a 10% discount, whereas if you live in this quadrant of town, you're paying 3% more.
And so my question to both of you is a question that I asked Councilman Castle when I spoke to him about this issue. What action are you asking for council to take? And because in what I've read, if we disagree with appraisal systems and we want to challenge them, who do we use as an expert? Because they've been the expert that we've used over the last, how many years, Bill? Yeah, so eight years. So what expert do we use if we're now challenging their expertise?
I'm not challenging. I would like to go back. I don't want to go to a third party. I want to go back to appraisal systems. We paid them $700,000. If there are no issues, convince us. If there are issues, fix them.
And so how you want to go, how are you suggesting that happens?
An iterative process of going back, just as residents came in and complained about their specific valuations. We're looking at this as a council. I see it. Other council members, other members of the public see that there do seem to be systemic issues, and that those systemic issues be addressed and resolved by appraisal systems, not by a third party.
And I would...
No appraisal systems address this matter?
Yes. I thought.
I mean, the next action step was just taken already. I mean, the Councilman Sohn's action step was addressed. So where do we go from here?
Yeah, that's what I want to know. Where do we go from here?
I think the appraisal systems has two obligations, and the example I will give is this. I presented them information of a resident whose home, they filed a tax assessment appeal. They received their judgment in October. it lowered what their previous valuation was by more than $50,000. When Appraisal Systems did the revaluation, they brought that number $100,000 above what their previous valuation was. And when presented the information, in the conversations I had with the individual at the Rota Center, it was, oh, well, we weren't privy to the information for the last round of tax assessment appeals. If they didn't have all of the information, then chances are some of the assessments that they made were as incorrect as that one that I just cited. So I think that they have a responsibility to, one, have all the information, especially if they want to take the information from the 195 properties that were sold last year. But the second thing that I think they have an obligation to do is to explain by what metric or algorithm they're calculating neighborhoods. I think that providing that clarity would go a long way to answering some of the questions that the residents have. And quite honestly, since they did the last revaluation, they should be able to juxtapose the results of the last revaluation with the results of this revaluation. The neighborhoods should align perfectly, and they should be able to answer the questions about the anomalies that have clearly been identified because they didn't have all the information. They need all the information. We owe it to our residents. That's more than $700,000 in tax money. If it's not right, we're just going to get hit with another wave of tax assessment appeals, and we're going to find ourselves right back in the same situation, having spent $700,000 for nothing. So those are two things I think that they should do in open session before the public.
So invite Appraisal Systems back in yet again. Is that? And does council have? Sure.
I don't think that there's a consent.
That's why I'm asking.
I don't agree with listen, I think that before we discredit an organization or a business that just did a townwide appraisal publicly, which is what some of us are doing, even if it's not intentionally, I think that we should either speak to them or reach out to them via the manager. You can explain the concern and see if they want to respond to this. But to just sit here and discredit them, I think it's a negative in two reasons. Obviously, for their business, it's not good. But for our business, where we're trying to give confidence to the residents that we just went through a fair process that affected all the residential properties and commercial properties of the entire township from corner to corner, and now there's a shadow of a doubt that's going to be cast on this process.
So is there consensus to have them come to a public meeting?
I don't believe.
I see it two. So there's three. So there's no consensus for that.
I think that this issue of coming to a public meeting, Mr. Rupp, there may be some legal issue that
The assessment of real property, particularly a mass assessment, which is what a revow is a very complex issue. The statement, again, there's a statement that says when you start with a false premise, everything follows from that is equally false. The premise that if a property sells for a certain amount, it should be assessed for that amount is one of those false premises. And let me see if I can give you a very simple example. Imagine, if you will, 4 identical sized properties in a similar neighborhood with a similar house on each lot. Of those 4 houses, 2 of them sell. One of them sells for $300,000, another one sells for $400,000. The requirement is for uniform assessments. One could look at that saying they should all be assessed for $350. That means one will be above the line and one will be below the line, but that is what is in fact required under New Jersey Appraisal Manual. So understand that in a perfect world, everybody only spends what a property is worth on some objective level. Unfortunately, that's not reality. You will have sales that vary
because people vary. This is not a mathematical precision. What you do is you attempt to establish a range of property values within a given neighborhood. And what a neighborhood is also a subjective determination, but it includes factors such as general size of property, age of housing stock, size of houses, right? Those delineate neighborhoods. The actual assessment process is even more complex than that. It is governed by a manual. Essentially, what is being done is to establish what is known as a residual land value, where you take a property and on its sales price, you then price out the improvement, the house, using a reproduction method, less depreciation, and you arrive at a residual land value. That land value is reflected by this averaging of sales within the neighborhood, and then you add back the value based on the manual on this reproduction cost basis, and then you compare that to what the average sales prices are. That's the methodology that is done and is required to be done by the new state of New Jersey. You will have in that method some higher, some lower, compared to one another, because that's the method by which we utilize it. It's not a perfect system. We have a concept known as a Chapter 123 ratio, which has a 15% leeway, top and bottom, generally known as the upper and lower limit. The legislature established that because it recognizes that assessments are not perfect because people aren't perfect. Right? Some people will spend more money than others for identical houses, and there's no justification for that other than that's reality.
Okay.
The Reval Company essentially has plotted that, and again, there's legal reasons why 94% have some advantages over 100%, but again, that's a closed session item I would talk to you about.
Okay. My recommendation would be for Councilman Castle and Sohn to provide to the manager some questions, concerns that we can forward to appraisal systems and request a response.
I'd be happy to do that.
That's what
Do we have consensus on that? Okay. Moving on, Councilman Sohn.
Number 3, I would like to suggest that we come up with a list of events that we hold as a township, whether it be public safety, whether it be internet safety, that we schedule public events where we have public employees, whether it is the police chief, the fire chief, other representatives of the township who are representing the township as a whole. We can come up with a schedule, whether it's once a month, every other week, every week, however often we see fit, and have those events offered by all 7 council members on behalf of the Township of Teaneck, where we give direction to the manager to hold those events and conduct those events for the benefit of the township as a whole, rather than having any individual or individual group of township council members conducting such events.
Deputy Mayor.
So I'm in favor of Councilman Sohn's suggestion. I'm not in favor of his negative portion of the thing, meaning I don't think that any of us as residents have given up our rights to promote any event for the residents of this town. And you want to know, our employees are there not just to be reactive, but to be proactive. Our health department gives health lectures. Our police department, I mean, we spend a lot of money on a division called community policing, specifically to be proactive. So obviously I know the genesis of where this is coming from. I support the idea of coming as a council to being proactive, but I don't think that should restrict anybody, a resident, a council member who's also a resident, from promoting any event to help the safety or or for anything to help the residents. You know, there's times when we first gave out the recycling bins, residents and council members as individuals went and got the township people to give out the recycling bins, and that's commended. We have Rotary, they have events, they invite the police and fire. We have the Chamber of Commerce, they have events, they're being proactive, they invite employees. So to just try to handcuff one council member's hands, because I don't know if it's envy or jealousy or lack of being able to come up with his or her own ideas, is counterintuitive to the concept of trying to help our residents. So I am supportive of Councilman Sone's concept of but I do have a caveat that when we as a council come up with the idea of having an event, that we don't go and jump down the manager's throat when he schedules the event. So, you know, that's sometimes a little challenging when we as a council come up together. So I support the concept of let's, as a council, have more events for our community, have more opportunities to help them with safety, with health, with wealth management, with whatever title or resources that we can come up with as a council.
I would just add to that. I think that it would be great if we as a council come up with events that we want to promote annually as a council, but I do not believe that individual council members should be prohibited from having their own events. We are elected beings, and I think we have an obligation to reach our constituency any way that we see fit. I held listening sessions as a council member, plan on doing them in the future, and I don't think that there's anything wrong with that.
I agree with the listening session where an event is conducted where there is significant confusion and blurring of the line of whether an event is a public event or a personal event. I think that this question has been raised, it's been conducted before, and I think the best way to avoid those issues is to work as a team. If we are using public resources for personal purposes, that be paid for, that be disclosed. If we are using it as a public purpose, that's conducted as a 7-member team.
Is there any consensus on Councilman Sones? No.
Mayor, I agree with both Councilman Sone and Councilman Katz. I agree with you as well, Mayor, that if there are issues that are, concerning to specific segments of the community, whether it's environmental or so on and so forth, that council people should be able to step out if it's an issue that is also a concern to them. But I think that there is a level of confusion that's created. I think that there's a level of confusion that's created when, if we send out an announcement from a personal email address, but we're using our professional credentials. Oftentimes, as it happened to me today at the Golden Grill, a resident will come up and say, well, this particular council member sent me this message, so you guys are doing this. And, it puts individual council members in a very precarious situation to be able to say, well, no, it's not actually a public event hosted by the council. It's an event that's being hosted by these 2 or these 3 council persons, even though it affects the larger community. I think that it's really, really a bad thing for us to do, to create impressions at events. If we send out mailings or we send out announcements, or if we put things in the paper, if we're creating the impression that something is for the greater community good, but then we're collecting private information, or we're collecting funds that go into a re-election campaign, we cannot host events on behalf of the larger community, use our professional credentials and our titles to get people there, and then collect donations or collect information that's not going to be disseminated to the municipality or used by the municipality. I think that blurs an ethical line, and I think that it's a practice that we should stop doing. And I really think that we should definitely not ever use official township whether a township seal or whatever it might be. I don't think that we should, as councilpeople, use official township resources, a seal or a logo included, in personal correspondence. I think that sets the wrong impression.
For the record, for my breakfast, I don't use any township information at all. I was elected by this body to be mayor, and it's a title that I have, and I will use that.
Can I just get in on it a little bit? I think there's a prohibition for a meeting to take place with 4 council members without declaring it a public meeting and having good welfare and all that sort of thing. Alan's proposal, if you look at it in all of its ramifications, means that it's going to inhibit people to run for office because you're holding a meeting and you're a candidate, but you happen to be a council member. I think it's a little more complicated than it seems when we fight about whether the safety committee meets or not. We have to be very careful to let people know this is a couple of people, and it doesn't speak for the whole council, but it may be a township concern. It would be very easy to just eliminate that, but it's like, once you cut off your hands and your feet, you figure out what is it that I did that maybe I should have thought about, and I think we should leave it alone.
Okay. There is no consensus on it, so let's move to item number 4.
Madam Mayor, you had indicated that when you were at the White House, again, recommendations for ways to become a digital city, that we're not reaching enough people with our alerts, and I agree 100%. I think that...
And it's not because we haven't tried. We need to do more.
I think we can find a better way to skin that cat. I think that one of the mechanisms that we have is to get people on board. One of the mechanisms where people are perpetually confused is about recycling dates. When is recycling? What could be recycled? I hear constant confusion. Was it a holiday? Was it not a holiday? We have trucks that go out and go to every single home and pick up recyclables. Let's come up with a list and come up with, let's say, a sticker. Put stickers on the recycling bins. If you want to get information about recycling, sign up for teanecknj.gov, Zone 3, Zone 6, Zone 8, and be able to collect that information. And rather than sending people going door to door to 11,000 homes, to use that as a mechanism to start getting people on board. Right now, there are a lot of people who believe that they are getting township emails through individual council members. People believe they're getting it from me. People believe they're getting it from other council members. And it is imperative that we significantly increase the number of residents who are getting information directly from the township, directly from our emergency services. To place anybody any resident, any resident's family into a situation where they are dependent on getting information secondhand from an individual council member, whether it be me or any other council member, places those residents at risk. And the best thing that we can do is get more residents involved. And one of those entry points where we are going and sending people to every single door in the township is picking up recycling. And by printing up stickers, putting those on the bins, inviting people to sign up for a recycling notification, we can use that as an entry point to get people educated and informed not only about recycling, but about other critical township events.
We send out a recycling calendar now that has...
The recycling booklet.
Doesn't it have something in the recycling booklet to register for alerts?
It does have that. I spoke to Councilman Sohn about this, and I do think that using recycling is a vehicle that we could use to get more people to sign up. We just subscribed to software programs called SwiftReach. So on our website, I have a technology person looking at whether we could set that up for some automatic emails. You could sign up for Zone 3 recycling. I'm suggesting an incremental approach first before we go print stickers let's get this system set up, let's put out some website alerts, and
I'm not clear on the stickers. The stickers are, if you could explain that a little further to me.
Sure, just having a notification. If you want to get recycling notifications, go to teanecknj.gov, Zone 6.
I understand that, but you have to read the sticker. So you're asking for DPW employees to place stickers on people's cans?
Many municipalities already do that as a mechanism. I'd be
I'm
happy
asking
to
a
send you-
question. I
Yes.
don't know that's
Madam Mayor,
very
I would think, though, if they're sticking a sticker on the recycling can, the people know, they put out the recycling can because they know what day they were supposed to be recycling. I mean, it's like this can's out on the front.
But Ellie, I think what he's saying is, we're getting their attention by using recycling.
Yeah.
But what they're going to do is come to our website and sign up for alerts, period. All alerts when they come in. So, I mean, rather than printing a sticker first, I want to get the website set up so that they can sign up for recycling alerts. And then we could start to advertise that. Let's see, maybe we'll get an extra 1,000 people. Then we'll step it up to another level. If it's stickers or, we got to go stand on the corner, whatever. But we can start with something that we could automate, that we don't have staff that have to send out this alert. It's going to be automated. So I have our MIS person looking into it right now.
Deputy Mayor, I would just like to say, and I want to apologize to all the residents on Maple Street for this one time that it happened last March. There are a lot of residents who do the recycling bin shuffle, right? They don't know the day of recycling, but they see all their other neighbors pull out the recycling bin. One day, last March, I wanted to kind of test the hypothesis that if I pulled my recycling bin out to the curb, would other people follow? And it was the day before recycling, and that's exactly what happened. So, I know there are a lot of residents that may
Did you
not
really
necessarily
test their
do that.
process, or did you just mess up?
No,
Let's just be blunt here.
No, I mean, Councilman Stoll and I discussed this, so many months ago, and sadly, there are a lot of people who are reminded about recycling only because a recycling bin goes out.
But why not just put the calendar on your fridge? I'm recycling zone 1. I'm every other Sunday. If legal holidays, then I'm not. It's not brain surgery. I have a GED. I'm a high school dropout, and I figured this out.
Yeah, the manager seems to be already working on this, so
Yeah.
we'll get an update. Number 5, Councilman
Can we
Jackson.
summarize people sign up for the alerts?
Yeah. And I have to commend both Councilman Schwartz and Councilman Hamaduddin, who on their Facebook page invited people to register.
I also refused to answer people's emails who emailed me yesterday saying, hey, what's the rule? I'm like, sign up. I'm there. No more free questions.
Number 5 is the audit, and by audit I mean auditor. One of the most critical relationships that the council has is a relationship between the council and the auditor reports directly to the council. He works directly for the council, and we are now in budget season, and we have not had on the books an auditor for all of last year. And that's information that was only provided by Mr. Garbarini by way of email. It was expressed that one of the things that the auditor does to ensure that our best practices are adhered to within our annual audit is they do these pop-up inspections in departments. And they do that, in the last quarter, if not the last half of the year. And they were not provided an opportunity to do that because their contract ended not last year, but in 2013. I personally got a chance to speak to Mr. Garbarini. He was more concerned about the audit that could be conducted, whether it's his firm that is retained or if it's another firm that is retained, but the mere fact that because of this limited window of time that we have, because of when the audit for last year is due, there's not going to be an opportunity to kind of have these surprise pop-up inspections to ensure that what was recommended in the previous audit is being adhered to in the current year. So I think that if there's anything that we can expedite, it should be bringing an auditor back on our payroll, quote unquote, so that we can actually get meaningful information about the processes, the financial processes of our township.
Manager.
Last year, council gave direction to to go out for RFP for auditor. I don't remember the date, but it's this month. I just spoke about it today, that we're going to be receiving those RFPs. I think there will be sufficient time to put an auditor in place. Secondly, the auditor is looking at our internal controls during the audit. And this coming in the various quarters is something that we pay for. It's something that we requested, and it was something that we did last year. So this doesn't happen every year that they're coming in early, but the bottom line, you still have one audit, no matter whether they came in during the year or not. He's still going to come up and provide the audit in a timely fashion. Also, if during any inspections, even if he found it, we'd still have it, it'd be in the audit report. So if something is an issue, it's going to be in the audit report and then get corrected in the corrective action plan. But you're talking about, internal controls.
Mr. Brown, just a quick point of clarification, because I'm not at a year yet. The way I understand it is if we receive an audit for 2014, but an auditor comes in and does an inspection in 2015, he's basically saying everything that happened in 2014, regardless of the fact that he didn't see it, he wasn't here for it, was done properly. And that's my concern. My concern is that we're now in 2015, and an auditor is going to come in and basically rubber stamp that everything that we did before they came in was done properly, and that now he's just reporting on what he sees in the new year. Is that?
No. He's going to come and look back at 2014 and look at our books. He's going to look at audit trails. He's going to say, okay, the police department received $100 for a particular item. Show the audit trail. Show how that $100 was received by the police department. Show when it was delivered to finance. Show when the money was put in the bank. That's what he's looking at. They're going to be able to examine our records to see. And there's a specific checklist, so to speak, that he's going down to look at as part of his audit standards.
Memorialization or memorialized direction, number 6.
Yes. I think that when we're giving the manager direction on specific things, or to the clerk, that we should memorialize that. I remember with the past council, as I sat out there, and I thought it was silly in seeing it, but your predecessor would say, do we have 4 nodding heads? And clearly on camera you could see 4 nodding heads. And that wasn't an official process, but at least you could go back to the video and see that there were at least 4 people who were in agreement about something. I would very much like to see us as a council memorialize direction so that there isn't any confusion. And the example that I can give is the 3, 3, and 3. Right? When we looked at 3 minutes for good and welfare for the public, 3 minutes in response for the council, and that was for, at the deputy mayor's suggestion, 3 meetings. We didn't memorialize anything, obviously, because we were at a retreat, but the original minutes actually did not reflect that 3, 3, and 3. And then direction was given to the attorney, and then a resolution was drafted that actually didn't reflect what was actually discussed. But there was no formal action that was taken because we were at a retreat. I'd very much like for us, if we are giving direction to the manager or to the clerk or to the attorney, that we as a council from the dais do a quick roll call to make sure that it is on the record who voted to give this direction, who did not, and that direction is clear. It has been a concern that has been addressed by members of the public to me in person as well as an email. And I think it's one small step that we can take to ensure that we are actually giving definitive direction to the manager or to the clerk. The only other example I would like to present is at the last meeting, yes, we did have a conversation about having a press conference. And there was no consensus of council that press conference, which is a special meeting, should be conducted on January 26th of 2015. There was no actual consensus. In going back to the video, it was, we directed the manager to go and gather dates. and to organize. But as we have so diligently done in the past, when we look at our phones and we check our personal calendars to see what dates we are actually available for meetings, I think that that same type of action should be done, and we should have memorialized it. I can't tell you where January 26th emerged from, but what I can tell you is that there was never before a discussion that happened between a quorum of council that chose that date and put it on the calendar. So I think we should memorialize those actions so that there is no confusion moving forward.
Any consensus on council? Councilman Son?
Again, I would like to concur. I think there have been a number of things, and the 3, 3, and 3 was something where we needed to correct the minutes to show what was occurring. Those minutes will be approved this evening from the December 3rd retreat, where if we are clearer on what exactly it is that we are doing, we will end up with better results, whether it's actions by the manager, actions by the attorney, so that there is greater clarity among the entire council as to what's being done. And I concur with the suggestion that Councilman Castle is making.
Deputy Mayor?
The example of the press conference is absolutely bananas. I mean, we sat here as a council. First of all, we've all been approached about this issue at CSX. The impetus was that residents were coming to us and needed an outlet and a way to try to gather or group together so that we can, quote, fight big government, in this case, federal government. It was suggested to do the press conference. We gave the direction to the manager. Everyone here seemed to have been, in agreement. We had our state senator in the audience at the time, which I know we complimented the fact that she was involved in the process at one point. I didn't watch the video. I'm just trying to remember a little bit. But if we didn't compliment her, we should have complimented her.
I'm sure we did.
I'm sure we did. And then after the manager does everything that he thought the direction was that he was supposed to be getting, and taking a it's not even proactive. It's called being responsive to the council. Then it becomes an incident that we didn't have the 4 nodding heads that we decided on that date and time. You know what? We sat here with the same exact direction after appraisal systems came in. In fact, I believe the manager was a little bit against the idea of having additional meetings.
And I told him to schedule a meeting.
And we said schedule a meeting, and not only did the manager go ahead and schedule one meeting, he went and scheduled 2 meetings. And nobody pulled out their calendar or anything. He followed the council's direction. So that was my reference earlier about if we sit here as a council and we come up with the direction, then we have to stick to the direction and not sit there and try to pick holes at exactly what happened. And listen, at the end of the day, if this press conference would have happened, but it didn't because of the weather, it would have been a good thing to try to group the residents of Teaneck together that are currently, in my opinion, being placed in an unsafe condition and an unsafe position by having these trains carrying whatever they're carrying, allegedly, and idling, becoming a public nuisance. And I would now ask that the manager please go ahead and reschedule this press conference. And you don't have to give me the date, because I may not be able to be there. But the importance is that we as a body are taking action on this CSX issue, and we're trying to get the residents who have the similar concern to come up and be there and be involved and try to group together as a louder voice so that we can, once and for all, stop the alleged hazardous conditions that are happening on our track in the middle of our town. Did I see 4 nodding heads?
But when we discussed this, I think it was in response to some emails that you received, and it was response to an email that I had received from Paula Rogovin, and I said I was perplexed as to what further we should do, and I stated that we had not taken an action as a body, and asked the manager. And stated it that we should have a press conference, and told him to issue a press release. I'm sorry that certain council members were not paying attention and didn't catch that, but it was stated on the record, And I don't think that we should have to have a roll call for every direction that's given to the manager.
It was stated that we would come back with dates.
No, that's not what was stated.
Reevaluation meetings are public meetings that are for the benefit of the public.
And what was this?
As described by, in the letter from Mr. Rupp and from Stanley, the press conference was a special meeting of the Teaneck Township Council.
Which is not what I asked for.
Already that demonstrates that there was a lack of communication.
No, the attorney was trying to protect us.
And I would
so
hope
that if 4 council members came, that we could not be accused, because you know we would be, of conducting an illegal meeting.
That if we have, and we effectively are scheduling special meetings, that we give every council member a heads up front and say, can you make it on the 26th? I certainly did not get any notification. No one asked me if I would be available on the 26th. It was wonderful that the 26th fit in very, very well with another meeting that was being scheduled for 7:30. I have to assume that there was some notification where some council members were notified. But I can assure you with complete certainty that nobody reached out to me and said, Councilman Sohn, does the 26th work for you?
And just for the record, Mr. Manager, when you issued the press release to the council members, was it actually issued to the press?
No. I
Okay,
sent
and what did the email state?
the email,
The email stated that you would be issuing this press release
yeah,
later.
later, yes.
And there was, and
So
just...
that's the notice.
No, look, but
And
Deputy
to
Mayor,
get back to you with any input, correct?
and input was provided, and I just...
No,
Deputy Mayor,
input wasn't provided, accusations were made.
Mayor, just to address the point that the Deputy Mayor brought up about the appraisal systems meeting, and this is very, very clear. If we receive a press release on Thursday for a press conference, which really can't be a press conference, as we were all educated about, for Monday, and we are within the guidelines of just barely creating 48 hours, that's very different than the manager on December 18th sending the council a notification that says on January 6th and January 20th, 2 weeks and 4 weeks away, I'm scheduling these meetings for appraisal systems. To give less than 48 hours, or to give just the minimum standard of 48 hours notice, and so that we're all clear, we were all very, very confused about whether or not we could actually do a press conference, which is why the attorney sent an email back, both Stanley and Mr. Rupp. And also, in speaking with the clerk, in speaking with the manager, and speaking with the attorney, there was that confusion. And yes, you as the mayor are able to call a special meeting, but you didn't call a special meeting originally. You called a press conference. And it was later told that we couldn't call that because of one of the...
I was never told that I couldn't call a press conference.
You were told that the calling of a press conference equated to a special meeting, and that you could call a special meeting.
I have a solution to this matter. We'll go back to item number 3. I'll just call a press conference on my own and not do something with the entire, in one breath, we want to do things collegial as a council, and in the next breath, we want to do things individually. I'll just call a press conference on my own.
Just correctly, and by the process, that's all we're asking for.
Sure. And then we have a whole agenda.
I think that we,
to the public.
the Mother Nature gave us a break, and there was no meeting on Monday, so we don't have to talk about that forever. We figured out how to do it right. Let's do it right the next time.
It wasn't done wrong.
Okay. Whatever it is that we didn't do that there was misunderstanding about, we can correct that as we do it the next time. Also, I don't think that bobbing of the heads is an official action. If we do something that's worth doing, we should do it right. Vote on it and move on to the next thing.
Standards for capital projects?
Yes. It was proposed by one of our residents, Dr. Rasheen. It was supported by Councilman Schwartz. It was supported by myself, that we should have some type of advisory board when it comes to reviewing the standards for materials and so on and so forth that go into capital projects. If we look at the Cedar Lane streetscape, it's a perfect example of, the wrong materials being used, things deteriorating, so on and so forth. I've walked Cedar Lane with the manager. He said, I would have chosen different materials because they would have lasted longer. If we have an advisory board that's able to meet with the manager or to view capital projects, because we forecast them, at least in a timely fashion, and stipulate that this is the minimum grade or the minimum quality of concrete that we need to use, or this is the minimum grade that we should use for a grate around the tree. I think that those things are going to add to the beautification of the township. It's going to add to the longevity of the dollars and cents that are spent on the capital projects, and we won't find ourselves as quickly trying to replace the Cedar Lane streetscape or other things if we just set minimum standards and we allow an advisory board to review those standards or set those standards.
Isn't that why we use the clerks of the work?
That's why we have the engineer.
Mr. Manager, what happens if the engineer disagrees with the advisory board?
The engineer is the professional who comes up with the standard. An engineer has to design and put together the project. So I don't understand what an advisory board is going to do. If the engineer says the standard is 5,000 PSI concrete, what's the advisory board going to say? I don't understand what's going to be said. We're going to hire professionals and have non-professionals review their work?
No. But we are now in a very unique circumstance where we have discussed openly that we have two engineers. One where the council has clearly said we'd like to move in a different direction, and a statutory board has said, no, we're going to keep that same person. And by the way, that same person was on the front page of the record being asked to step down from his post because of a conflict of interest. So now we have a situation where, as we've discussed openly, we could have conflicting engineers, but to simply have a commission, an advisory board that sets a standard of quality, the engineer can go above and beyond that quality, but to have a minimum standard, which is above, state standard, is just, I think we shouldn't be operating by the lowest common denominator. We should raise the bar a bit and force our engineers and our, consultants to operate at that standard.
Is there any consensus on this issue?
I think we should have an advisory board. It's going to slow things down a little bit, but there may be some things that they come up with that we missed along the way, and it's not bad. We have advisory boards for all kinds of stuff, and it's not a terrible thing to have an advisory board for this kind of thing.
I believe, are you tying 7, 8, and 9 together right now?
Yes.
I would just let you know, I missed under old business. The mayor had asked for some more information, but because our closed session meeting went 2.5 hours long, I didn't get a chance to go over it with you. There's some information on that. I'm very much in support of it. You had some questions. I have some answers, but we went over time, let alone at lunchtime.
Revisit that?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's ready for you here.
So with that, then...
But I am nodding my head and shaking it very...
So I have 1, 2, 3.
Sorry, I want to weigh in if I can. Are we that way, or are we going to...
Well, we're going to relist it. We're not... No, for the Capital Projects Advisory Board.
Can I make a motion that we institute an advisory board for engineering, technology, and capital project standards?
I'll second that.
Deputy Mayor.
I'm against all three, some more than others. I honestly don't want the slow wheels of government to be a lot slower, because we have to now pass it to an advisory board, before the manager buys a printer, or before the manager decides to buy a copier, or a radio, or whatever. I don't know what the standards are that we're going to say falls under the rubric of technology. I think that we have paid professionals. Listen, Teaneck is fortunate that we have a lot of wonderful talent, but that talent, as far as being at our disposal, is not always there. We've seen that on some of our other advisory board, like the Site Plan Advisory Board, where we've put in positions specifically,
And we can't fill
fill because there's a professional that maybe was at the time we were fortunate to have that person, or like when we had the park, we were fortunate to have some very good professionals. So I'm absolutely against this. I think that not only will this cause additional confusion, additional bureaucracy, additional, who knows, possibly additional expense with the delays, and it's not necessary. I personally think that as far as technology, we are fortunate to have Mr. Alex Rasheen, who's very, very technical savvy, and I encourage the manager to reach out to him as often as the manager feels comfortable to. But I don't think we should create an entire advisory board so that every single time the manager has to buy something for the needs of our 400-something employees and 11-something buildings, or whatever the statistics are. It gets first delayed in months of bureaucracy. And then what happens when the advisory board disagrees with the professional? Who do we decide to go with? Do we get another advisory board to arbitrate the two advisory boards, the professional and the advisory board? Who do we decide to go with? And then at the end of the day, it's the taxpayers that end up paying the expense of something that was done wrong, but we could say, no, it was an advisory board that advised us to do this wrong. So I disagree with all three, and I will not support all three.
Let me talk about the advisory board. If we do diligence and put the right people on the advisory board, then it's going to help the process. If we just do it haphazardly like we've done some other things, it's going to delay the process. So it requires that we pay attention to who gets put on this board.
Except for an advisory board usually meets once a month when they have a quorum. The Township of Teaneck runs 6 days, right? 5.5, 6 days, somewhere in that neighborhood. 5.5, well, we have to run 7 days. And we always have to be available to make decisions. So I disagree.
All right.
I support the idea, and if you want any more specific detail, just step outside, and you see there's a fence, and there's this generator that sticks out a few dozen feet above that fence. And that generator, we overspent about 50 to 100%. And I wish for that project that we had somebody else looking at that. And you want to know what? Sometimes when you have one person saying, you know, maybe you ought to check that out, maybe you ought to get a second opinion, sometimes you get a third opinion, and you play the data off against each other, and you make a decision. But so often, and far too often, this council has made bad decisions based on incomplete information. And I hope that that additional information in a township that is blessed with a tremendous number of resources of people who have all sorts of backgrounds and expertise could benefit our township, and I think this is exactly what we're looking to do.
I made a
I just
motion,
gotta-
and it was,
Can I just, before you, so you think we spent 50% more on that generator to run the entire complex? It runs the library, it runs the municipal building, and runs the building next door and the connector. I think we spent $200,000 on the generator. You think we could have got a generator that'll run elevators, everything, full power? An electrical engineer designed it.
Again,
What does the advisory board say?
Okay, there's a motion on the floor by Councilman Castle. Is there a second?
Mayor, I would ask, because Councilman Dr. Pruitt clearly was in favor of it, that we wait to vote on this motion until he returns.
It doesn't matter. It's
Okay.
there's enough. Yeah.
I thought that he might
It's
want
already on
to
the
be part of
record.
it.
We can wait. We can wait. Hiring freeze,
Yes.
number 10.
As we are now engaged in the budget process, I would like to make a motion that we institute a hiring freeze until we,
On the floor.
well,
How do we remove the motion?
We don't,
I have not yet made the motion, but I will make the motion after we vote on the advisory board, that we institute a hiring freeze as we get through budget season. And here's why.
Okay, why don't we do this, Councilman Castle? We'll wait till Councilman Pruitt gets back on the floor and dispense with the one motion. Manager, can you start with your manager's report?
Okay, Township Manager's report. I've probationally appointed James Hoover to the position of police officer effective January 5th, 2015.
January 15th.
January 15th, 2015. I have probationally appointed Stephen Morena to the position of police officer effective January 15th, 2015. July 4th parade is the next item that I have. This year's July 4th parade falls on a Saturday. I just want to make the council aware of that. It's on Queen Anne Road, passes one of the synagogues. Usually what we do is we still go down that route, but we make it near the synagogue, we make a quiet zone. So it's quiet in that area, no blowing horns, or we've done that in the past. So I just wanted to bring that up to the council, see if that's what the council wanted to do again. What time does it start? It starts at 9:30. I believe it starts at 9:30.
Can we look to see what we did the last time? I remember that it was a discussion. First, we're talking about moving the date, but we all agreed that that's not the answer, and we've kept the July 4th. It's supposed to be on July 4th. But there happen to be 3 synagogues on that route that you mentioned, not one. And so what did we do last time?
The last time we were quiet at those locations.
Through the synagogues.
In front of the synagogue?
I wasn't there, but I know that was the...
And for the record, I'm not speaking for the synagogues. I mean, they may want the parade in front of it. I mean, it's something to do during prayer, just to watch, I would do it myself if I was in one of those 3, correct.
Is there...
You'd be the marshal.
Is there an option of relocating the parade maybe to Teaneck Road? No.
Isn't that the Patriotic Observance Advisory Board that would do, would they make that recommendation? We were on advisory board, so I just want to know if that's...
No, they could.
Well,
Technology Advisory Board, maybe.
So you want, Councilman Castle, you want to bring that to them? And
I am happy to
discuss it?
bring that to them as the liaison to the Patriotic Observance Advisory
but is
Board.
it logistically possible? They don't make that decision. And the advisory board is just that advisory. We are the council.
It's possible, but, that's the route that, we usually use, and in the past, we had a quiet zone, so if
And Mr. Manager, I'm
it's early.
No, I was going to say, can we, I'm just thinking, can we come down Queen Anne Road the other way, or?
Or go down to Palisades or something like that.
Yeah. Can we look at a new route?
Why don't we bring it to the board?
I'm happy to do
Let
that.
them come up with those.
I will call Colonel McGilchrist tomorrow morning.
Dr. Pruitt's back. We have some motions now.
Sure.
just, Madam Mayor, on this item for the July 4th, during that time that we're bringing it to the advisory board, can we also maybe ask the manager to reach out to the leadership of the 3 synagogues and just see if they have any
Objection,
meaning that, if they have objections, we'll hear about it on Monday. But the question is, maybe we're creating a non-issue. Maybe they say, you know what, our prayer goes on, July 4th goes on, and we don't have an objection at all.
It seems like we just discussed this.
Right, we did, right? We just...
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to establish advisory boards for capital projects, engineering, and technology.
Second by...
Can I have a roll call?
Yes.
No.
Councilman Pruitt?
Yes.
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 No. Did that have to go before the public? That's not a, did we have to open that up to the public?
Actually, what's happening is that you're instructing me to prepare ordinances to establish those advisory boards.
Okay.
So that will actually come before the council. I can come before the council with a formal announcement.
Okay. Councilman Castle, your next item.
Yes, hiring freeze. I propose that we institute a temporary hiring freeze while we are actually in budget season. I'm very much in support of strengthening our social safety net, whether it's police or fire, or even replacing some of the key personnel that we have, that we need in the township where there may be vacancies, be it, the late Sam McNeil or otherwise. But as much as I support the hiring of these 2 most recent police officers, I also recognize that if we average it out, a police officer over the course of 25 years may cost the township about $2.5 million. That's over 25 years when we consider all benefits and salaries and so on and so forth. And I don't think that we should just allow for additional hiring to happen as we are discussing the budget, because we're looking at the budget, we're looking at the current head count, we're looking at ways that we should responsibly increase it, keep it where it is. But, you know, the hiring of certain employees really can impact the budget over the long haul in a very significant way, and I think that we should temporarily halt the hiring of any employees until we actually account for their salaries in the 2015 budget. So I'd like to make a motion that we institute a temporary hiring freeze until we get through the budget and we've identified what positions we are okay with hiring.
Second.
Yes.
Yes. I want to talk about it before I vote. Are we talking about not hiring the 2 policemen on the table?
No.
They've already been hired.
They've already been hired.
All right, so we're talking about from now on.
If there is a mission-critical position that needs to be filled, and the manager says, the CFO quit, we need a CFO, well, clearly that's a mission-critical position, and that's, we've got a lot of meetings coming up, but,
So I can vote for it. Yes.
I'm sorry, so if there's a mission-critical position, what are you saying?
if the CFO gets up and walks out, and we need a CFO, or maybe that's not even the best, scenario, because the league can provide, if a critical position, if a critical position that the manager deems to be a critical position is vacant or is made vacant, then he can present to the council, since we have so many meetings scheduled over the next 2 months, that he needs to hire for this position. Now, if a position does come open, right, and it is a critical position, and he has to put out some requirements for someone to actually apply, well, that's going to take time anyway. But during this process, I think that while we're discussing the budget, the hiring of employees that it could have a significant impact over the long-term budget, that should be frozen until we get through the budget season.
We dealt with this issue recently where there was a resolution to have the manager clear hirings with the council, and I believe that our attorney ruled that it was not within our purview to do so.
Because we had approved a budget that then, this is what was conveyed to me by the attorney, that we cannot put forth a resolution that installs a hiring freeze and then pass a budget that allows for additional positions, because by doing that, it's superseding the resolution or the motion that was made. I'm simply making a motion that right now, over the next 2 months, as we discuss the budget, that we don't hire any additional employees, we don't add to the current head count, and that if there is a mission-critical employee that leaves the township, that the manager says, we cannot do X, Y, or Z without this employee, we need to promote this person to this position, then that's something that comes before. But every promotion, every person that is hired, over the long term, could potentially cost the township a significant amount of money.
Manager?
I'm not going to do that. I'm presenting the council with the budget. I understand the situation with the budget. I appreciate the financial position the town is in. I don't have a plan to hire anybody that's going to impact the budget in that way. I've given you a budget. I understand what you're saying, but I don't have any intention of doing that.
The only reason that I would like for something to be memorialized is because I can't speak for anyone else in the council, but I can tell you that I woke up, I received a calendar alert that said that 2 officers were being sworn in. That adds significantly to the long-term budget. There was no forewarning. There was no heads up to the council that said 2 members of the police department, or 2 members are being added to the police department, and I'm swearing them in. Now, in the past, and I can only give the example that you had provided when I first swore in as a council member, you had actually sent out a communication that said, Councilman Sohn, Councilman Castle, I am swearing in these individuals on these dates. You're not members of council yet, but would you like to be present at that ceremony? But there was no, we had absolutely no idea that there were 2.
But our agreement was that we would remain at the 2013 level of staffing. So hiring those 2 people put us at the 2013 level of staff, leaving 1 vacancy in the police department.
Okay, so let me ask you.
That's what I did.
So if you have absolutely, I just want to make sure, if you have absolutely no intention of hiring anyone during the budget season, and I'm simply asking that we memorialize the fact that you are not going to hire anyone during the budget season, I think we're saying the exact same thing, but we can memorialize it and say, now we have something in place that says that he is not going to hire anyone during the 2015 budget season. You're saying you have no plans. I'm saying I just want to memorialize it. We're saying the exact same thing. I just want a formal process that says it cannot be done, and you're saying that you're not going to do it. So is there any reason that we just can't memorialize that you're saying you're not going to do it? And
Okay. He's not involved in that decision. So there's a motion on the floor. We're in the middle of the roll call. Dr. Pruitt, did you have a statement?
You know, we keep talking, and so we cancel out what we said before we said, if the manager says he's not going to hire anybody, and if the manager and Mr. Castle says that if you need a critical person, then you can come back to us, and we will probably go along with the need, then we don't need to do
Exactly.
particular resolution.
And that's the way it's been done in previous years.
Now, let me just...
The manager has always understood that during budget season that there would be no hiring if that was the consent of council, but there was no memorialization taking place.
Okay, so I just want to ask a question that flows with that. Part-timers. In our discussion, we're talking about full-time people. We're not talking about part-time people who don't have who we can say leave tomorrow. We're not talking about those people. If we, a guy that's a temporary guy in the back of a DPW truck who has no rights to the job at all, we can, we need them for recycling because we have to rotate those people. We're not talking about adding the headcount. We're talking about those people get rotated. So they're temporary workers. They are, they don't have any rights. They don't have they have a temporary title. So if we decide tomorrow we're not going to have, recycling anymore and we don't need those temporary workers, they just go. They're different than hiring full-time, permanent people that have a right, to a job. That's what we're talking about.
Mr. Rupp, any action that we take place tonight would result in a resolution on a further agenda, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct. I just want to clarify one thing. The previous opinion given was that the council could not approve or disapprove hirings on the basis of specific people, that would violate the terms of the charter. But a hiring freeze per se is a legitimate policy issue, but the council really can't get involved. So on the critical position, it is position, not personnel. So that's understandable.
Okay. So we have a roll call on let's start the roll call over.
yes.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
No. Okay. Did you finish your report?
Did I finish my report?
Yes.
No, I'm not finished with the report. Okay. The council-directed items. At our January 13th meeting, the council wanted me to meet with the TRBCA, Teaneck Road Business Community Alliance, and the Northeast Block Association presidents. It's still in the process. In the process of arranging that meeting. Should have it set up shortly. Regarding the charter school and the liquor application, we're waiting for them to contact the clerk because that comes from the clerk's office. They may need a catering license. I'm not sure exactly how they do it, so the clerk is aware of that. The press conference we already spoke about. I'm going to get that rescheduled. The timeline for repair of the bridge for that goes over Hackensack, over the Hackensack River, Anderson Street, Cedar Lane Bridge. We spoke to the county. They don't have a timeline. They have an engineering company that's working on it, drawing plans for that. The date for community meeting in May, We have two options. Council wanted me to propose a date. We could either do one of our council meetings, which is May 5th, move that to a potential location, maybe move it to a Rota Center, have it as a different style meeting, where we do a little more interaction with the public, or we could have it a separate meeting on May 12th. So that's up to the council. May 5th, move our meeting to the Rota Center or some other location in the community, have a different type of meeting, or May 12th, have an additional meeting, so.
Can we relist that again as old business on the next agenda,
Okay.
since it's not something that's time sensitive?
Okay. Also, council wanted me to add the first Wednesday in December 2015 as the retreat. The clerk is adding that. Establish the advisory board for the manager for Sportsplex. I'm going to be meeting shortly with Dr. Hoffman to discuss that, and Glenna Crockett. The recommendation on Mr. Ferrer's proposed ordinance, I responded to him with a letter. Council was copied on that letter. I am not recommending his ordinance. The attorney has provided an opinion on a holiday display. It does comply with the current law, and I think what we're doing presently is sufficient. The issue of installing the street signs, the new street signs along the major roadways, River Road, Teaneck Road, I've spoken to Fran Wilson, Director of DPW, and he's going to change our plan and start getting those signs installed along those major roadways. The council wanted me to look into installing directional signs for our business districts along Route 4. Fran Wilson's contacting the New Jersey Department of Transportation to obtain permission to do that.
Mr. Manager?
Yes.
For those signs, does the DOT want to see what they look like prior to them giving permission?
I don't even know if they're going to let us do it. I'm not 100% sure, so he's contacting them to see if we can do it. If they even allow us to do it on Route 4. So he's got to get in touch with someone from there. And I'm sure they'll want to have input on, what the sign looks like. Or if they're willing to do it and put up a green and white sign like the other sign, that's sufficient as long as they're directed to all the business districts.
I'm sorry, if I can.
Again, you sorry?
Yes.
No, just on clarification. I'm sorry. If they don't give permission, can we possibly do it, not on the ramp, because I know that's still governed by the NJDOT, but on the first, if we get off of Route 4 by River, can we do it on River? If we get off on Teaneck Road, by Teaneck Road, we do it on Teaneck Road?
Yep, I think that makes sense, yeah.
Okay.
So, I would love to get those signs up on Route
that's
4.
much better
Then once they
exposure.
put those up, we'll provide the additional direction along the township roads. I'm sorry. What, Madam?
Manager, are you done?
No, I'm not done. The architect for the Voti Park restrooms, I've advised Mr. Gianfacaro that the council is looking for an RFP to include both of those projects, and he's going to be working on that, and I'm going to have to find a second person as well, so that's something that's in process. The Splash Pad Park on the 22nd, I visited the park with Councilman Sohn and Katz and Mr. Pearson and Glenna Crockett, and we think we've located probably 2 potential areas for the Splash Pad Park. So That's in the process. It's moving. I'm sure we'll be using probably open space funds for that. So I'll keep you updated on our progress on that.
And just to clarify again, first of all, thank Chief Carney for joining as well. But I think both of the locations that we looked at are in the space between, pretty much between the swimming pool and the inclusive playground, where it provides an opportunity to really tap into both the swimming pool and those people who might want to go to the swimming pool and bring a younger child, and taps into the inclusive playground. And again, we also discussed that there are issues with the flooring in the inclusive playground, which would also be looked at as part of some of this process. And again, thanks to the manager for doing that.
End of report.
Thank you. We've now reached the point in our meeting, Good and Welfare, where the public has an opportunity to address any item on the agenda. You have 3 minutes to address the council, and please just give your name. Dr. Rasheen.
Dr. Rasheen, Teaneck. I appreciate approval of the advisory board. I want to say that as for bureaucracy, okay, we are lucky that this storm did not lead to shifted to the west and did not to the east. I'm sorry, and did not lead to blackouts, because in blackouts people would be freezing, okay, and this is not necessary. In my suggestion, okay, which I worked on just for quite a time, is possible cheaply to provide that practically every homeowner keeps his heating during blackouts. Okay, and just one thing, because there was going to be this business with safety because of terror attacks and all that. One of the major terror threats is the attacks on the grid, which happens around the world. In Pakistan, the attack on grid just put 80% of the country in blackout. In La Jolla in California, last June, just shooting from AK guns, some unidentified assailants just completely blacked out Silicon Valley and professionally cut the 911 cable. Okay, so we have something to do urgently, and we are dragging their feet. Who is bureaucrat here? So the thing is that what was suggested is okayed by Trenton, but I see the slowing down and dragging feet of some of the members of the council. By the way, I'm sorry, you are most long-term members of the council, and you are responsible for some things which have to be twice. Okay. So the thing is that's necessary to do, and I ask the council to direct manager that this means of fast during blackout, informing the town and installing the switches which allow people to stay warm will be done immediately, not waiting for the next storm to come or terror attack come and people freeze in their houses. So unfortunately, the building department did respond while they promised to do it by Friday, okay? Because we have to tell people immediately during this week or 2 weeks before next meeting to distribute the information, and people be able to know and know that they'll get information through the radio if blackout is there, and will save $300,000 for this system. Please just ask manager to speed it up, and let's do it during this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to address the council?
I just wanted to give to you this revised recommendation. Just to implement means that...
Dr. Rasheen, your 3 minutes are up. Thank you.
You understand, but you asked me something.
No, I didn't ask you anything.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to address the council? Naomi?
Naomi Kramer. Considering everything that was discussed tonight, 3 minutes is not enough for the public to respond to it, just not enough. You had like a workshop meeting where you discussed so many different things that you really should allow the few of us that at least come and care to at least have a say. We might have something constructive to offer. One of the things I'm concerned about is that it's almost as though the retreat was for naught, because so much of the discussion was on working together and doing things as a team. So for you to set up a community meeting on an issues that relates to the interests of the entire town and the entire town council, and to invite public officials, are they volunteering? Are you paying them overtime? If they're volunteering, now what do you owe them in return? If you do it as a council on anything important enough, you should hold a special meeting, an extra special meeting on community safety. The whole council is there, and you have a regular meeting. If Lizette wants to hold a personal listening session, that's very different from having a community meeting, inviting public officials, and having only 3 of you organize it. This is a town council. This is a town. You should work together. This shouldn't be grandstanding by 3 people. It's just totally unnecessary. Have your own personal listening sessions. Even have your own personal meetings. But if it's an issue of concern to the entire town, then have a special meeting. You can do that on CSX as well. I think we are lobbying the wrong people. You must lobby the car companies, the companies that make the cars. They're the ones that can change the cars. CSX has to, by federal law, allow legal cars on their tracks. So we can ask the companies to maybe reinforce the cars they already have, but by lobbying CSX, it's useless. We have no control over that. Nobody has control over that. Also, this is not the League of Women Voters. We go by consensus. We're not allowed to take votes. But you need to take votes. You need, I know my 3 minutes are up, but you need to have people on record on how you vote on important issues that have come up before this council.
Thank you, Naomi.
We need to hear how all 7 of you vote.
Thank you, Naomi.
On motions.
Would anyone else like to address
Not
the council?
consensus.
Thank you. Dr. Powers.
Not yet. Chuck Powers. I want to commend the council for its wisdom in not having the discussion about 150 Teaneck Road on a night when there's a major meeting in the Northeast. That was a very important thing to do, especially since that meeting was actually identified to any member of the public only in the course of today. Transparency is something you've got to work more strongly on across the board. I understand that you're not going to videotape your budget meetings, since they are the most important meetings of the year. You're not going to have them videotaped. So I will videotape them, at least as long as I'm in town when you have them. And I will make them available on teanecktransparency.com. And I don't understand why it is that you think that's a really good idea to change last year's policy so we don't have videotape of our meetings. But that was what the mayor said she was going to do. I want to talk mostly tonight about the failure once Professor Dan Levin, had come to you and said there is a systematic discrepancy between the way in which people with expensive homes are being evaluated relative to the sales prices as compared to those which are less expensive. Because everybody I know in the Northeast remembers this map from February 2007, in which the concern of a lot of people was that one quadrant of our township was actually being improperly valued as compared to the one where I live. And I tend to think that what Professor Levin found is right. For some reason, my value has dropped dramatically. I have no idea why. There must be something. But the main point about this, folks, is if that perception is out there, you absolutely have to bring it forward, let the public know what is the discrepancy between what Mr. Levin said and whatever it is that your vendor can come up with who's done this assessment. You must bring it together because you are about ready to open up not only the issues of rampant tax appeals once people begin to get, you're likely to end up with some class action suits. It is really fundamentally important that you tell the public that in fact you have an evaluation that gets it right. And if you don't have it right, for heaven's sakes, figure out some way not already to have handed it to the county and be down the road with the wrong set of values. I can't think of anything more likely to cause dissension in this town than to have that image out there. Levins said that he thought he was benefiting from it. You must figure out some way to get that changed.
Thank you, Dr. Powers. Would anyone else like to address Dr. Hoffman?
Good evening, Ken Hoffman. Teaneck speaking as the chairperson of the Environmental Advisory Board representing Votey Park, and I'm going to bring a smile to everybody's face. First, I want to thank Mr. Broughton as well as our new engineer. I've been in discussion with both Mr. Joe Sorgi and our project manager, Ms. Allison Kokorski, and I would like you to all know that the submission of our remediation documents to the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection began today, and the process should be quick and simple, and we are hoping that the completion will be the end of March, where we will have a public meeting of the EAB RVP, and I hope that Dr. Powers will join us as well, where the final presentation will be to the community. Once that is completed, then the submission of the RAO to the Remedial Action Outcome Plan, which the state of New Jersey requires for the release of the Green Acres funding, should be relatively quickly, and we're looking for that to be done by the end of April or early May. I'd like to remind the council that this will be essentially paying for bills that we have used, and is $750,000, of which over $620,000 is grant, and then the remainder, I think, about $120,000 is a 2%, 20-year simple interest loan, and will fulfill a number of the projects that we have in the in planning for Votey and around town, including the splash park we've talked about. I also would like to bring up one aspect that with Mr. Sorgi and with the LSRP plans being completed, that we will need to look into a budget because an LSRP will have to be contracted in order to make sure that all permitted activities are done correctly at Votey. We have been talking about improving our fields, putting in a splash park, and so any sort of disruption of the soil cap will need to have permission from an LSRP and a plan of action. So we need to understand, and he will be submitting that to the township as part of his recommendations and the completion of all of his documentation. So it's been a long birth, something like an elephant, of a couple years, but we're very close. And the biggest thing that we're starting right now, and Jamie is involved with this, is a notice in lieu of a deed notice. We don't have a deed on Votey Park, but certified letters have to go to various organizations, industries, and towns in order to what they are allowed to do and not do for perpetuation. So I wanted to give you some really good news that hopefully we'll have a check within a few months. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to address the council? Good and Welfare is now closed. Any members of council wish to address the public? I would just like to say to Naomi that I think the council realizes that we can't tell CSX not to transport, but certainly we could tell our elected officials that we expect for them to hold the companies accountable and have conditions that are have cars in good conditions that do not provide a safety hazard to the community. I know it's the federal government. As far as the budget, Mr. Manager, is there any reason why we can't get the budget meetings recorded by the township?
Yeah, I'm going to speak to Fran Wilson tomorrow and see if we can get someone from the DPW to come.
Okay. And appraisal systems, we've already addressed that. Councilman Sohn and Council are going to send questions to you to refer to appraisal systems. Any other members of public? Sure.
I just want to thank Ms. Kramer for reiterating where our focus should be in regards to the CSX issue. In closing, I just want to thank members of the public for coming out. We don't have as many this evening, but if there are concerns out there in TV land, please come to a council meeting, bring it to our attention so that we can have meaningful conversations and engage in meaningful dialogue about issues that we may not necessarily be aware of. So thank you to the members of the public who are in attendance today, and I invite any members of the public who have an issue to come to the next council meeting, which is next regularly scheduled council meeting is tomorrow, to bring issues to our concern.
The next budget meeting, the first budget meeting is tomorrow. The next regular council meeting is February 9th. Just in speaking about CSX, Senator Weinberg had indicated that she had some additional information from the Department of Transportation. Can we reach out to her to see if we can invite her to our next meeting to address whatever those new updates are?
This is updates on
CSX, yes. Can I get someone to move the consent agenda? Does any other members of council wish to speak on anything? Can I? Yes, no, maybe?
I'll say yes. Regarding CSX, I think we have to be very careful as to what it is we want to do at a conference, at a press conference. And I think there's some very specific actions that we can take regarding these tank cars. First of all, we should be monitoring those tank cars. We have opportunities to monitor those tank cars and to see if there is anything happening untoward on the tracks. And I would like to recommend that we put monitoring cameras on our bridges pointed at the tracks, looking at both directions, whether it be over State Street, over at Route 4, at Sagamore, and be able to monitor those trains. Just as there are license plate readers, we also have the opportunity to read placards. There is technology for placard readers, and we can set up cameras on the side of the tracks and monitor ourselves and see what is coming through. We can also monitor and read the serial numbers on those DOT 111 tank cars and see which ones are compliant and which ones are not, and start gathering data. We also have opportunities to start addressing some of the specific issues regarding noise. Noise from the CSX trains has been a constant issue. We had this issue of a quiet zone at Newbridge Road. And this has been on the agenda for years. Nothing has been done about that. There's very little that CSX will do on their own. There is ample action that we can take to address these issues. I also want to follow up on Dr. Powers and just reiterate his remarks. You know, we received information that had been sent from Appraisal Systems, and that was sent to council members on the 19th of January. What was sent to us had been sent from Appraisal Systems on the 23rd of December to Mr. Teig, and had been forwarded from Mr. Teig to the township manager on the 16th. This information was due to the county on the 23rd. We had an opportunity to have 3.5 weeks in which those members of the public and those members of the council who had the ability to analyze that statistical information to do that research, and we lost that opportunity. And it is losing those opportunities where we do not take advantage of the expertise that exists in our township, whether it is statistical analysis skills, such as whether it's folks like Tom Abbott, myself, or Professor Levin, or technological skills such as Dr. Rasheen and other members of the public have to offer, where we have so much to gain from what can be offered.
Thank you. Can I get someone to move the consent agenda?
I'll move the consent agenda also.
And the bill is in the amount of $6,199,513.98. Councilman Castle?
Yes, with an abstention on the bill list, and I would actually like to pull Resolution E for discussion.
Deputy Mayor Katz?
Yes, with the abstention on the bill list.
Okay. Councilman Pruitt?
Yes, with an abstention on the bill.
Yes.
Do we have enough? We don't have enough council members to pass the bill.
My understanding was that there were individual bills on the bill list that warranted essentially a recusal, right, as opposed to an abstention, as opposed to the entire bill list. Is there a reason that those who abstain believe they can't vote on any of the bills on the bill list? I mean, I might just be misunderstanding what the issue is.
Well, let me correct Michael, if I can abstain on item number 15-00074. Everything else is fine. Is that what you're looking for?
Okay. Yeah. Essentially, yes, you're recusing yourself on that one item.
One item.
Right? Okay. But are voting in favor of all the rest.
That's correct.
Okay. And Councilman, Deputy Mayor Katz, is that the same issue, or?
I'm recusing myself from the entire bill.
Okay. And Councilman Castle?
I, too, am recusing myself from the entire bill list.
Continue with the roll call.
Councilman Stone?
Yes, and I'd like to pay a few extra bills, if I can give you those check numbers. Okay, I'll just say yes.
Yes, with the recusal on the check that's made out to me.
The net result of that is that the one bill that Councilman Pruitt recused himself on has not passed. Okay, I just want you to make sure you understand that.
And what is that bill?
Could I make a motion for reconsideration? Because I don't think that was the intended result.
That's why I put it.
So his
In
one
other
bill,
words, we had two abstentions on everything. We had a recusal on Dr. Pruitt's one bill, and then there's 3 yeses out of 6. That is not a majority.
To make this easier, can I change my vote to yes to all the things that relate to the council members who had to recuse themselves from those specific line items, and an abstention on the rest?
That's why I'm making the motion for reconsideration, because I think that if we work together, we can pass everything that needs to pass.
Okay, that's
We have to do it again.
okay. Well, technically, the motion to reconsider has to be
Second.
now seconded and roll call on the motion to reconsider.
Councilmember Castle?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Katz?
Recuse myself from the bill list.
Councilmember Pruitt?
Yes.
Councilmember Schwartz?
Yes.
Councilmember Stone?
Yes.
Mayor?
am I voting on the, I don't know what I'm voting on.
Your motion on reconsidering the vote.
Okay, yes.
Okay.
Now, if someone was to move and because now it's, now.
I'll move the bill list.
Okay. And then there needs to be a second.
Second.
Okay. Now, please specify that which you're recusing yourself from. Okay.
Councilmember Castle?
I am voting yes on the items for which Councilman Pruitt Councilman Sohn, and the mayor have to recuse themselves. So I'm voting yes on those.
Items.
I'm voting yes on those items, and I'm
Okay.
recusing myself from the remainder of the bill list.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Katz?
Recuse myself on the bill list.
Councilmember Pruitt? Councilman?
I vote yes for the bill list, and I recuse myself from the item that I listed.
Okay. Councilmember Schwartz?
Yes.
Councilmember Stone?
Yes.
Mayor?
Yes, with recusal on the item that's made out to me. I'd like to move Resolution E for the purpose of discussion.
Second.
Councilman Castle?
Yes, so this particular resolution has $16,000 worth of funds that are just being transferred. The only point of clarification, and I don't know if it has to come from the manager or from Mr. Rupp, is the $10,000 that's being transferred for legal expenses. And the only reason I ask is because we've had a number of moves on legal expenses with this new council. We've renegotiated the legal contract, we've increased the retainer, and the way I read this, we're transferring funds because the amount that we've appropriated for legal in the 2014 budget is under, and we need an additional $10,000. Is that correct?
Correct. The explanation I have is that she needed additional funds in there to pay bills for Genova Burns.
Can we discuss those bills in public, or do we have, is that a closed session item? I mean, I would just like to know why we have an overage, because we identified a pretty large portion of taxpayer money for legal expenses last year, and then we renegotiated the retainer to take it from the tens of thousands to the hundreds of thousands, and I just want to know why we now need an additional $10,000 on top of what was already a really sizable expense.
Because we've spent all the money that was allocated for legal, and there's $10,000 additional that we need to pay Genova Burns. Now, we could go back over everything we spent, but she needs $10,000 to cover those bills for Genova Burns.
Mr. Manager, if I may ask, I'm looking at page 43 of the budget. I don't see, I mean, I'm looking at the numbers. We had an adopted budget of $929,800, and we spent $900,000. It would seem that we're $30,000 under. I mean, I don't see that where that transfer is
Councilman
necessary.
Stone, Manager, can we table this until we have additional information?
Can I just say one thing? When we put together spent...
Well, actually,
numbers
there's
for
a
this-
table on the floor, so we have to
Okay.
vote.
Okay.
Councilman Castle?
Yes, the table.
Deputy Mayor Katz?
Yes.
Councilmember Pruitt?
Yes.
Councilmember Schwartz?
Yes.
Councilmember Stone?
Yes.
Mayor?
Yes.
So we're tabling the transfer?
Yeah. Until we have additional information. And perhaps you could provide that information on tomorrow, and we could pass it tomorrow. If
Can we take action tomorrow?
five of us says yes, we can.
It is a regular scheduled meeting on the annual schedule, is that correct?
Yes.
Then you may, in fact, take additional action on the agenda should a majority of you so consent.
Introduction of ordinances.
Ordinance 7-2015, an ordinance amending Section 36-3.1, stop intersections designated in Chapter 36, Traffic of the Code of the Township of Teaneck. Ordinance number 8-2015, an ordinance amending Section 36-14.1 of Division 2 of Article 2 of Chapter 36, entitled Traffic of the Township Code, adding prohibited parking, all vehicles except those with a valid handicapped parking placard or license plate between 10 a.m. and 12 noon, except Saturdays, Sundays, and holidays on Hartwell Street. Ordinance number 9-2015, ordinance amending Section 36-11.2 of Division 1 of Article 2 of Chapter 36, entitled Traffic of the Township Code, adding restricted on-street parking spaces for handicapped on Cranford Place. Ordinance number 10-2015, and ordinance amending Chapter 33 Development Regulations of the Code of the Township of Teaneck, establishing the Retail Overlay Residential District, ROR, and the Retail Overlay Business District, ROB.
Roll call.
Councilman Castle?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Katz? Councilmember Pruitt?
Yes.
Councilmember Schwartz?
Yes.
Councilmember Stone?
Yes.
Mayor?
Yes. Before we adjourn, before I take a motion to adjourn, I just would like to inform council that tomorrow at 9:30 at Lowell School, I'll be participating in the Mayor's Book Club, which is sponsored by the New Jersey League of Municipalities, if anyone would like to join me. It's 9:30 at Lowell School. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Any opposed? Off the record.
Yeah, so in the book.
Yes.
So she can't pay these bills right now because she doesn't have money to pay. She needs a transfer. Then those bills will show.